Please do know that we will be recording the webinar this evening. You will not be heard or seen, so please don't worry about that. If you have questions, please do enter them into the chat. We will be using the chat for a little bit of interaction, as well as some questions at the end. But I wanted to welcome you all tonight and also welcome our presenters, Sabina Fila. She'll be presenting on mindful parenting. Is that even possible? Great question. So without further ado, I will hand the floor over to Sabina. Welcome.
Thank you, Ellen. And Melissa, who has supported, and the Ackerman Institute for giving us this opportunity of being together tonight. So what I will share with you tonight, I have myself learned from mostly from you, parents, caregivers, from colleagues and mentors, and from my daughter and granddaughter who are faithful teachers. So I'm grateful. We know by experience, and it has been backed by neuroscience, that we can best parent, relate, really perform any kind of task when we are in when we're grounded, when we're present, when we're mindful. But what is mindfulness? Of course, it's a word that has been used a lot in a lot of different ways. So for this presentation, what I mean by mindfulness is the capacity or the state of being in the present moment, aware of what is happening internally and externally, without being swallowed up by it. So feeling the emotions, being aware of the emotions, but not being hijacked by the emotions. So mindfulness is not a fixed space. It's something that we rather go in and out of. And it is often difficult to stay in this state of spaciousness and not get into a reactive mode, especially with the people that we care about the most. So what I would like to do with you in the next 45 minutes is to have little experiments and go in and out of mindfulness, and maybe explore what may support you to be in or to return to a state of mind that is more helpful, that can serve you better, especially in challenging situations. Now, when we do these experiments, of course, if you're driving or you're in a place where you need full alertness, do not do the experiments with us. Just listen to the webinar, and then the webinar is being recorded. You can go back to it in your own time when you're available. So actually, let's get started with a brief experiment, if you will. So take a moment to turn your attention inward. Some people like to close their eyes or not, so whatever way works for you. So turn your attention inward and be present to your sensations, thoughts, emotions. And from that space, bring to awareness a joyful moment involving your child. Choose just one moment. It can be a recent moment, or it can be many years ago. It can be a moment where you're looking at your child, or maybe the two of you are together. but it's a moment or an image that brings up joy, enjoyment, love. And when you bring that image, that moment, what do you notice about your child? And what touches you about what you notice about your child? What do you notice about yourself? What happens to your body, your feelings, your energy when you see that image, that moment? What do you notice about the relationship between you and your child at that moment? What words come to mind to describe the relationship? And as you are immersed in that moment, in that image, is there a word or symbol that best captures that moment for you? And when you are ready, you can take a few moments to transition back. And if you have something maybe nearby that you can write on, or your phone, you can jot down a couple of words that came up during these few moments. And then I invite you to maybe if a word came up, to write it on the chat.
So a couple words that are coming up are free, joy, connected, pride, peace, caring, love, fun, and laughter.
Yes, thank you, Ellen. And thank you for putting those words, right? So these are words that come up, right? And of course, many, many others. But this sense of love, of peace, of connection, right? And if there is one thing you retain of this evening, of this webinar, this is it. Now you can go and cook dinner because this is the most important thing that I want to convey, that this place is there. You know, sometimes we don't have access to it, but this place is real and this place is there. So what happened next, right? Life happens. And there are fears and desires that we have for our child, for our children, beliefs of how things should be, who should do what, individual stressors for the parent or the child, and they can have to do with health, with education, with work, with life transitions, sometimes with chronic situations, sometimes with time-limited situation or some specific crisis, right? Specific challenges. Family stressors, right? So there can be transitions, migrations, losses, change in family composition, environmental stressors, So there can be, we live within systemic injustices and violence, COVID, war, climate change, politics, and day-to-day hassles. So, you know, there are worries, mistakes, not having enough time, having a disagreement with a partner, lies. Lies is my favorite one. And the reason why I speak about lies and war in the same breath is that it is not so much the magnitude of the event, of the situation, that is important as much as the impact that it has on you, on your child, on your family in a specific moment. So something can be very big, but not have like the same impact that something minor may have at that time. So from, you know, from major life events to small hassles, these things have a way to accumulating, right? To kind of piling up. And then they kind of pile up on top of that heart, that beautiful heart, and that space of loving bond that we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. And our brain can at times look like this. So I just want to stop the share right now for a moment. And what I want to tell you is that if you're here, you know, I don't know you, and unfortunately I cannot see you. I would love to be able to see you, and I cannot see you. But if you're here, what I know is that you have resources, that you have faced adversity, and that, you know, you're here tonight. And certainly these last 2 years have not been easy. Not that COVID really started all, you know, societal issues or family issues. Of course, we had lots to deal with before COVID, but it certainly has been, you know, layer upon layer of things. And so I just want to invite you just for a moment. You know, we kind of often go towards, okay, what is not happening? What am I not doing? What my child is not doing? So for a moment, just kind of have this celebration, or this acknowledgement, if celebration is too strong a word, acknowledgement of all you do every day, and all you have done, and all you have overcome, you know, as a person, as a family, as a caregiver. So let's, now the break is over and we're going back to the slides. So this, we said, is, you know, can be our brain at times. So in order to deal with situations we face every day, we use resources, right? And we have, all of us have resources and use resources all the time, even though we may not think of it that way. And so breathing is a resource. Clearly, you know, unless you have respiratory problems, breathing is something that it's an easy resource because it's easily accessible, right? Breathing is always with us. And especially I'm talking about breathing as paying attention to the air coming in, the air going out, the body movement when we breathe. So we know that when the body slows down, the mind slows down, right? So that can be quite helpful. Another resource is movement in whatever way you like a movement. Often when there is a lot of stress, we have a tendency to tense up, to tighten up. And so movement can be very healing. Now, connection and relationships, of course, people tell me, well, I do have connections and relationships, and I have hardly been able to see them in the last 2 years. Now, one thing I would like to suggest is that sometimes even bringing to mind, and maybe you can even take a moment and do it now, right? So if I bring to mind the face, the image of a dear friend, of somebody, somebody safe and loving in my life, just bringing the person to mind may help us to feel that sense of welcoming, that sense of support. So yes, different than actually being together, but still a resource. Then, like a basic one, meeting our basic needs of sleeping, eating. And I know that it's like so basic, like I don't go to an Ackerman Institute webinar to hear that I need to sleep or my child needs to sleep, but it is so important and often lacking. Then, spirituality in whatever way you express it or is present in your life, art, music, nature, all of this. Now, one thing about resources is that some of them are our go-to, or we use them a lot. But if some of them may have been important in the past, but we have not, we feel a little disconnected from them, right? And so when we do not use those resources, when we don't leave space in our life for those resources, then they are less accessible when we actually need them. And maybe as I was going through the list, there is something that you went, oh yeah, that's something that that I do, that I go towards. That's something that is helpful. So something familiar maybe have come up as we were going through the list. So I'm going to show you this slide. Now, for the life of me, I cannot remember where I first either heard or read about this window of tolerance. So, but it's now, something that is widely talked about. And I find it something simple but important for us to understand, which is that we function within those two lines, right? So when our mind, our system, our nervous system is within those two lines, then we can play, we can learn, we can relate, work, be present, parent, think, problem solve, right? And instead, then something happens and boom, like we go out of that window and then we react, or, we're totally flooded with emotions, or we feel overwhelmed, or our mind is confused or blurry. So when one thing about the window of tolerance is that when we are in that space, when we are out of that window, the only thing we need to do for us, or also our child or anyone that we're with, is go back to the window, right? Because there is nothing really helpful that can happen when we are out of the window. as I was saying, I was talking about resources before. So our window of tolerance is not always the same, right? So let's say that we're physically sick, so our window of tolerance narrows, right? Let's say we are in a good period, in good shape, and we have plenty of rest, then it may become wider, right? And so the more we can resource ourselves and invite resources in our life, the more our window of tolerance can be wide and can tolerate those fluctuation of having more stressful days, or some kind of events that happen in our day-to-day life. So I'm going to now stop the share and invite you to another moment of mindfulness. So just, turn your attention towards yourself, observing your internal process, your body, your sensations, thoughts, images, feelings, whatever comes up on its own. As you bring up a challenging parenting situation, not maybe the most charged, as we're not together in person, but something challenging. So you can bring to mind who is involved in the situation, and what is the situation about, maybe the place, if there is a place. And as you bring to mind that situation, what happens to your body, to your breathing, to your body, as you bring that situation to mind? What feelings or emotions are present? What thoughts come up? What beliefs or expectations come into play? Is there an impulse? Like, what is it that you want to do? What's at stake? What is most important about it? What would you like to see happen? And now maybe there is one of the resources that we just looked at a moment ago that you can invite to be with you as you are in this situation. If so, do it now. Or else you maybe can just go back to observing your breathing for a few seconds as we transition back to our conversation. And if there is something that stood out in these few moments, again, maybe jot it down if you want to go back to it later for your own sake. And noticing, what came up when asked some of those questions may have helped you to start kind of sorting out or unpack some of the many entangled things that come up when we're faced with a challenging situation. So that is one thing that is helpful is like to move from this space where things just feel like really bad or really difficult to sorting out, figuring out the pieces, or like my grandmother used to say, trovare il bandolo della matassa, which roughly translates to, like, where does the yarn start, right? So, and again, that is not necessarily changing, or is not actually at all changing the situation you're in, but it is allowing you to look at things in a little bit of a clearer way. So, so slowing down, identifying, naming, sorting out, this can all be helpful allies when we face a difficult situation, right? Or in our parenting day-to-day struggles. So we don't have tonight the time to go through all of those things, one by one. So I will just kind of pause and on two things. One is fears and desires, and the other is beliefs. So as parents, as caregivers, from the day that a child is born, or like actually even during pregnancy, whatever the baby does or doesn't do, we interpret it as projected in the future, right? So, for example, a baby cries a lot, or a toddler doesn't share a toy, or a 6-year-old doesn't want to go to school, or a child struggles with transition and it's always a tragedy when something starts or something ends, or a teenager seems sad or has a lot of fights with their peers, right? So we observe all of these things, and there are lots and lots and lots of things that happen every day. Again, some may be, more striking, and some may be really quite benign. And suddenly our mind goes, oh, they won't be able to focus, so they're going to drop out of school, or they're not going to find a life partner, or they would be alone, they will get into trouble, or maybe they will be like that family member who had such a hard time living in this world, so all those fears, maybe you kind of felt like, even as I was speaking them, I was like feeling oppressed by them, because fears have that way of impacting you and really a crushing or paralyzing sense. Or people may experience it different, but certainly these are all things that come up and we're not really aware of it, right? So this is a kind of internal inner commentary that happens all the time, and if it's unexplored, then it just creates a lot of anxiety that we don't know much what to do with. But if we slow down, and if we give ourselves a chance to have, allow this inner dialogue to come to the surface, then we can check it out, right? And and so what can we do with it, right? So first, we can name, what are the fears and desires that are triggered by this situation? Then, on a scale from 1 to 10, how realistic are the fears? Are the fears more about your child or more about you, your past, right? So sometimes we react not really because of something that is a real threat to your child, but something that has evoked something in your past. Now, the fact that the fears may not be realistic or may not be about your child doesn't mean that they're less important, right? Because fears are fears and they still have to be handled with. But recognizing where the fear comes, what the fear is about, may really help you to know the next step. What do I want to do with it? Or, how immediate are the fears? I mean, clearly, if your child is being kicked out from school next week, well, that's immediate, and you have to kind of move to action. Different from, when they will grow up, maybe that will happen, right? So, and then what are our desires behind the fears? Because of course the fears are all our attempts at protecting our children, because we want them to have a good life. We want for them to have an easy life. We want for them to be happy. And so that, it's so legitimate to have fears and to have desires. And we can think, what are some of the things that I could do now that could support my desire for my child, right? And, what is needed at this time. So even if fears and desires are like automatic and they're, quite legitimate in our relationship with the child we care for, we love, however, on the moment, they can interfere, really be in the way of your parenting the way you want to parent, right? They can really just kind of escalate the situation in a way that may not be helpful. So this is the fears and desires. And another one is beliefs. Right, so we can identify our beliefs by noticing what comes up when we finish these sentences. No? A caregiver should, blah, 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 blah. A child should. Now, sometimes they can be, more specific according to one's social location. It can be, I don't know, an Italian middle-class mother should have their meals ready all the time. Or maybe like the son of an immigrant should, right? So, and beliefs may be specific to culture, or it may have very little to do with culture. It has to do with your family, right? So, or both. So something for us to ask ourselves about beliefs is, whose beliefs are these? Are these really my belief, or the school belief, or my parent belief, or and are these beliefs still current? Because of course, beliefs sometimes evolve or change, or new beliefs come in. So when somebody says it to me, do I go, oh yeah, that's really what I want for my child, and that's really what I feel and what I stand for? And sometimes when we hear somebody say that belief to us, then we go, no, like that's ridiculous. That's no longer what I think, maybe that's something I held as a kid, but, so sometimes the beliefs, are not really updated in our mind. And so our mind kind of makes them come up. Another time is we may have different beliefs that are at odds with each other, right? So maybe there is a belief that I have held that about respect for the adults, respect for elderlies, and then there is a more recent belief about, well, children should be able to express themselves, to have their voice heard, or to have an input, right? And so sometimes those beliefs could clash. Or maybe, I have a belief that, I want to offer my child the opportunities that I can offer them, and that so I do that, but at the same time there might be another belief that is an earlier belief that, well, things need to be earned, or like things should not be taken for granted, right? So sometimes like those two beliefs may be at odds. So understanding the beliefs, again, it doesn't change the situation, but really understanding the beliefs and the meaning and where they come from may help us to break their spell, and here is the bubble being burst. Because sometimes, beliefs can feel so rigid and have such a hold on us. And then, I don't know if you have experienced that, something happens and, we realize, oh my God, that's not true. So another thing I would like to, before we end, I would like to comment on is this, that maybe earlier during that few minutes of mindfulness exercise about the challenging moment, you may have experienced some of this, right? Maybe some expectations come up, or fears, worries, desires, insecurities, pressure, etc., right? And now all of this list of things, if it stays in the middle between you and your child, then one, you cannot really see your child because you have all of that in front of you. And two, your child may feel quite alone in that situation. And so one repositioning that sometimes is possible is, to think, what can I do so that me and my child, can be together. And, still the list is going to be there, but it is a different, really a different experience to be disconnected like that and to regain some kind of connection, still knowing that we have to deal with that list. Now, sometimes it's not your child that is on the other side of the list. Sometimes it's your partner or co-parent, or sometimes it's your child's teacher, right? And the same, what would happen if the other person, rather than being on the other side of that list, would be on your side, and together as a team, you could look at these expectations and fears and worries, etc., etc. Or also, are there other people that you would want to invite here, in your little team as you deal with this? So finally, a couple of questions that I find often helpful. What do I need? And what does my child need? And what is my goal? Sometimes the goal is not clear. What am I trying to do? What is my goal? What is my agenda in this situation? And what's available? And the invites are, be patient with yourself and with your child. Don't go about it alone. And then when needed, really go back to the heart, knowing that, that's there. Sometimes we don't see it, it's hard to be in that space, but it is there. So I'm going to stop here and give us maybe a chance to, to have a conversation, or if there are some questions or comments, or if you want to, share something with us.
So we just invite anyone, if you like, to just write any questions or reflections in the chat. Someone is just asking, can you put the last slide back up?
Oh, sure. Hold on. And okay. This PowerPoint, really simple, but it will be available to you. I think Melissa will send it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll send this out to you all tomorrow.
Yeah.
And yes, we will be sharing the recording. You'll get a link once it's up on the website, and you can go back and review tonight's webinar.
And clearly, it is very different to parent a 6-month-old baby and to parent a 17-year-old grown child. and as we kind of touched upon just a little bit, there are so many variables, and each child is unique and each family is unique. But so what I really wanted to focus on is some tools that can apply really no matter what the situation is.
Okay, it looks like we have a couple, let's see. Okay, so we have a parent of a tween where there is so much pushback. I don't think there was a question there, but I think just sharing an experience.
Yes, and that is also so difficult when children may really show by their behavior or their attitude the very opposite of what they need, right? Because when a child, when, let's say, a baby is hungry and yells or reaches out to be picked up, and you pick them up, and then there is really a sense of, the communication is working, right? They ask me what they need, and I can actually do something about it. But what happens is that it is often kind of complicated because, well, we are human beings, even as adults, are not always that great at asking for what we really need, right? And so we may give a message that is a go away message, while, really what we want to say is, yeah, I need some reassurance, I need some safety. So how difficult that is, those pushbacks. I guess the, one thing that I could say about that is to kind of stay in that roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have, I think folks are just sharing the reflections around, let's see, someone is just commenting, thank you. Your tone of voice and the message you gave us was very helpful and soothing. I know I have the capacity to be patient, patience for myself and my autistic 31-year-old son. I feel that I go to the top of that window so much more quickly with my children than in other settings, like at work. Is this common?
Very common. I guess it's really, I think parenting is really one of the most difficult, complicated things, because it just kind of changes all the time, because parenting each child, is different at every stage of development, is different. I really want to take a moment. I feel like the parent who wrote about parenting their 31-year-old autistic child. There are some chronic situations that make it a particular challenge, right? And we learn so much from the challenges. So like often parents who have been challenged, like they're such great resources. And one thing that I would say is that we all need kind of more rest and respite, right? So support, is really one of the most important things. About, my window of tolerance is much narrower with my children, is because I care, right? Because not that you don't care about your work, of course we care, but we care in a different way. There is just so much at stake with people we love, that, really be patient with yourself. Like it's really, really natural.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sabina. We have another question here. What do you recommend regarding parents being on the same page and practicing mindfulness?
And practicing?
Mindfulness.
Oh. Actually, mindfulness or actually resourcing, I would invite you to think if there are some ways to resource that you can use as a family. Is there something, maybe the family likes to dance, or maybe to draw, or maybe to, cook, whatever, right? But, sometimes, and sometimes people in the same family like very different things, so that doesn't work. But if it does, to really all have this idea in the family that we all go in and out of this kind of window of tolerance. And there are moments that, we need to resource to go back to a better space. About parents being on the same page, I think listening to one another, not an easy thing, is the most important, right? Because why is it that your partner feels so strongly about a certain thing? And why is it that you feel so strongly, right? So these are not kind of superficial things. And so there are profound beliefs that are involved. So listening to each other, taking the time to listen to each other is important. We don't always have a lot of time to do that in our busy lives, but it's certainly an invitation to do that.
Mm-hmm. I see like a few questions where folks are sort of talking about being able to balance between mindfulness and discipline, or perhaps also like kind of dealing with situations like with kids when there might be a challenging situation like homework or getting things done, or again, sort of that issue around getting pushback. How to like navigate those moments and both being mindful, open, loving, and also creating the discipline perhaps. And
Yes. So, of course, each situation and each question would deserve much more time. But I guess, two things come to mind about that. One is with discipline, I would talk about structure. What structure is in place that is going to support your child, doing, what they need to do, and an easy communication. Are things already, are certain routines and expectations already built in? Now, I am not suggesting at all that parents can be loving and really gracious and loving all the time. They're not going to be. Most of us are not going to be. And so, sometimes, that thing needs to happen for tomorrow. So, like, we don't really have a lot of leeway in terms of okay, let's kind of be mindful and see, when you're ready to do this. So we are not going for smooth, and we are not going for, perfect all the time. But even in that situation, I guess if you as a parent, while you are in this kind of struggle about things that need to happen and need to happen on a deadline, and the child who gets distracted 20,000 times, if you take a moment, maybe go to another room or and ask yourself, okay, so what am I feeling now? What is happening now? What is my fear? What is important now, right? Because sometimes, like maybe like a homework may be really important and they just need to do it. And then there may be a time when, well, maybe to, like my child is like, I don't know, coming out of a call, like they had a super busy day and like we've had a family thing. And so, whatever, we're going to let go of the homework. So I guess to clarify what you need, what your child needs, and what's important in the moment at times can be helpful. And, like sometimes you really structure it really well and you do everything that you need to do, and still, it is not easy, so I certainly don't want to say that there is a recipe for, always having your child do, what they need to do, because there isn't. Some things can support that or hinder that, but that's that, yeah.
Great. We have one other question related specifically to parents with autistic children. How do we alter our approach with autistic children that perseverate? For example, my son can't stop debating about things even when the issue has been, quote unquote, solved.
Yes. So, right. So in this case, you're talking about an autistic child. And in any case, let's say each child is going to have their their temperament, right? So each child is going to have some specific inclinations or preferences or way of doing things, right? And so I think that as parents, it is really a balancing act between one, really understanding what your child's capacities are, what is he or she actually able to do or not, and creating situations sometimes that can fit to in that capacity or that the inclinations that your child has. But also, of course, the world is not going to adapt to your child, so that sometimes the limits that you set, or the fact that you may say, I know that you want to continue to talk, and right now I need to do something else. So the limits that you set are not just limits that you're setting for yourself, is you are helping your child to know and to experience that in the world, it's sometimes the world can adapt to them, but often they have to adapt to the world, right? So it's kind of a give and take, and with the frustrations that result from that, right? That the world really is not. If we think of schools or the educational system, certainly is not really meeting a lot of the kids' needs, personalities, ways of learning, right? Is quite generally, quite rigid. So yes, trying to find situations that are easier for them or more suitable rather than easier, but also, there are times when they cannot, they will have to contain, themselves. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Sabina. I think we're almost at time. I don't know if, let's see if I can, do we think we have time for one more question? Let's see. So this is a little bit of a reflection, but I think that it addresses some of the dynamics that you're talking about. So someone is just sharing that when their child doesn't want to stop his play so he can finish breakfast and leave for school, I tend to get serious and he tells me I'm angry, and he very quickly gets angry and explodes. This happens every time I want him to do something, he's eating, getting dressed, etc. This escalates almost every day. I do get serious and angry right after. It is very difficult for me to calm down, and I tend to repeat myself. The window of tolerance helps to think about my own process and this daily challenge. He is 5 years old.
Yes, I would say that a lot of parents by 9 o'clock are exhausted, because the morning can be very, very tough times. So really, I think all we could, I guess I would think of any routine, any structure I can put in, any way that I can simplify what needs to happen in the morning. And now, of course, routines sometimes work for a while and then you have to change them because they don't work anymore. But so finding, external things and having really your child, even, a 5-year-old, they can kind of collaborate with you into devising or developing a morning routine, and see if then the fact that they have kind of come up with that it's a little bit more of a motivation. But mornings are hard. Yeah.
Wonderful. Sabina, thank you so much. I know that we are out of time and I apologize. We couldn't get to everyone's questions, but we will be sending out this PowerPoint to everyone. So please look out for that. We will also send you the link to this video recording so you can always review this and go back. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And Sabina, thank you. I hope that you can take a look.
Thank you, Ellen. I thank you everyone for being here.
Lots of gratitude and appreciation. Some really wonderful comments here. So I hope that you can see all of those. Thank you, everyone. I hope to see you again. Take care.